everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. It's Tuesday and the patch notes for patch 9.15 have been posted, and that means it's time for another patch note rundown. As always, I'm going through the biggest changes in this week's patch, and letting you guys know what you can be looking forward to in the coming weeks. 9.15 is absolutely minuscule. There are a lot of changes, but a lot of them are very, very small changes. So it's hard to tell exactly how much of an effect these are going to have on the professional play or skilled play environments, but nonetheless, we're going to look through this anyways. Riot did say this patch is supposed to be small to compensate for the fact that 9.14 was a very large patch, so I guess this is kind of compensation for that. So anyways, let's go ahead and get started. Obviously, of course, the project skins are going to be in this patch. There will probably be some event going along with it, though likely they won't bring back any of the game modes because that isn't a thing Riot does anymore, apparently. So we will have new skins available, though, which will be nice. First and foremost, biggest change I want to talk about is the Galio changes. Now, Riot really pulled a lot of power out of Galio's kit. They did make it so that he can't flash during his W, which feels terrible, but it was sort of crucial to making it so that they could put power back in Galio's kit in other places. So now they're trying to reward Galio a little bit more if he's able to pull off some of his more inconsistent damage, like using Colossal Smash and Justice Punch. Colossal Smash's cooldown is still 5 seconds at all ranks, but it's now affected by CDR, which means he can get it down to around 3 seconds or so if he's able to max out CDR, which lets him smash a lot more often, and the damage has been increased at later levels, so if he's able to get that in the late game, he'll be really able to smash some foes. Justice Punch got up a little bit of base damage as well, so if he's able to land it, it'll be a little bit more rewarding than it is at present. Karma is getting some nerfs here. She's been very strong at professional levels of play. She's been seeing a lot, so Riot are trying to tone her down, and they've decided that the movement speed nerfs weren't enough in 9.13, so they're giving her yet another nerf. Her bonus shield on her Empowered E is going down by a substantial amount and losing a bit off the ratio as well, so Karma won't be able to shield for nearly as much when she pops her Empowered E. I honestly don't know if this is going to be enough to nerf out Karma in pro play. Obviously, this does hurt her team fighting and once she starts grouping with allies, but this doesn't do an awful lot at her laning phase presence where she's just kind of able to throw projectiles at you, build IBG, and be basically immortal. So it will make her weaker. I don't think it's going to be enough to really knock off her presence in pro play. Kha'Zix is getting a buff on this patch. I did actually look at the numbers. I know a lot of people were very scared of the Kha'Zix buffs, but he is actually below 50% win rate. He is below the point at which Riot have said they will buff champions, and he's not seeing professional play. He's not seeing a lot of ban rate in skilled or elite play, so the buffs do make sense. The base damage on his Q is going up by just 10 points at all ranks, so he will be doing a little bit more damage than before. Again, not sure that this is going to be enough to push Kha'Zix over the edge, but definitely will make him feel a little bit better to play. Accordingly, LeBlanc is also getting a nerf. I disagree with LeBlanc ever getting nerfs because I hate that champion, but suffice it to say she is below the thresholds as well and therefore is getting a buff. The root damage on her ethereal chains is going up by 10 at early ranks and scales up to a 50-point buff at later ranks, so a late game LeBlanc will be dealing a significantly higher amount of damage if she's able to stay in chain range. Obviously, that's a lot harder for her to do in the later stages of the game as she's a lot more squishy, so we'll have to see, but I like that this buff rewards at least the skilled part of LeBlanc's kit and not the brain dead part of LeBlanc's kit where she presses Q on you until you die. Lee Sin is receiving some buffs as well. Now, Riot have said that he's underperforming at most levels of solo queue play, and even while he's getting played at higher levels, especially pro play, he still has a lot of weaknesses and counters, which makes him risky to pick. So Riot are essentially trying to buff him up in a way that'll help the solo queue players that are struggling with him, and ideally make him a little bit better to play at all stages of the game. I feel like this buff in particular has chances of not making him a must pick in pro play, as it doesn't really do a lot to address his weaknesses, it just makes his strengths clearer, which I think is a fair way to buff a champion. His Sonic Wave's base damage has been improved, and his Resonating Strikes damage has also been increased yet again. So Lee Sin will be doing significantly more amounts of damage on both parts of his Q if he's able to land it, which should make him better in solo Q play for the Lee Sin players that can land the Qs without necessarily making him super strong in a lot of other aspects of the game. Lissandra's getting some buffs on this patch as well. Riot are trying to buff her back up a little bit after she got nerfed a lot as a core because of Aftershock. Then Aftershock got nerfed, and then Lissandra was kind of bad. So I believe these are a little bit of compensation buffs for that. Her base health and health growth have been increased to improve her defenses in the early game now that she doesn't have Aftershock really to rely on. And Frozen Tomb's damage ratio has been increased as well to give her a little bit more pop in late game team fights. So Hopefully this will help Lysandra feel a little bit better about herself. I don't think it's going to be enough to bring back Aftershock Lysandra. I know it was played in EU a couple weeks ago, but I don't think it'll be enough to really make it that come back. Lucian is getting buffed on this patch as well. The Culling's base damage is going up to 60 per shot in the late stages of the game in order to make it so that Lucian doesn't just become completely irrelevant. This is an interesting buff. I think he's already good. He's starting to see play in the mid lane actually again, so I believe this will really incentivize players to pick him more, especially since Corki and Lucian mid are starting to kind of crop up again, and now that Lucian won't necessarily fall off a cliff at the later stages of the game, this should make him a little bit better. It might be enough to really make so that players start considering Lucian. We'll have to sort of watch and see how this shapes out as the patch goes on. Malphite has a few buffs on this patch. Now, when they did ship the mini rework to him, it was intended to be a moderate buff, but they were too cautious. There were a lot of changes going on, and they undershot. So they are giving him some more power back, and a very significant bug fix that I will talk about here in a second. The slow on his seismic shard has been increased by 5% at all ranks, so he'll feel a little bit better about hitting somebody with that. And Thunderclap's base cleave damage has been increased as well. So these are on the auto attacks after the initial hit. The area of effect damage is how much he'll be doing. So this is a fairly nice change. The biggest one here is Unstoppable Force. Will cast at max range if used outside of max range. I can't express how excited I am to have this back. It was really frustrating trying to cast R to get out of a bad situation, and then Malphite just didn't want to cast R. So I do appreciate that this is coming back. Should make Malphite feel a little bit better to play. In all honesty, I don't know where he's going to shape up following the rework in 9.1.4. Obviously, he had been previously played as sort of a counter to the top lane Jace, and that kind of caused Jace to fall off a cliff as well in popularity. And then Malphite got reworked. He's got some buffs on this patch. I doubt we'll keep seeing him played unless Jace continues to see play, and since you can't really see one without the other, I doubt we'll see Malphite, but these buffs are still nice. Poppy has a very small buff. She's just getting more movement speed on the W, which, again, we're really thinking is, oh my god, Poppy keeps getting buffs, but because the W's a lot more windowed, this is probably not that big of a deal. It'll make her feel a little bit better when she does hit the go button without overly improving her too much. Kiana finally is getting some changes here. Especially for ARAM, she can now get the river element from health packs in Howling Abyss. So Kiana now has access to everything she wants to do. As an interesting thing, I believe if they've just coded health packs as river, she'll be able to stun you if you stand on top of a health pack with her ultimate. I don't know if that's how that's going to work or not, but it is something that I want to keep my eye out for going forward. Audacity now only deals damage to targets if they're within 250 range at the end of the dash, which means that it's possible to flash away from it. If Kiana does hit Audacity towards you and you flash before she reaches you, you won't take damage anymore. So that is a nice little change there. And Supreme Display of Talents cooldown has been increased and now scales down with rank. So I do like this change because it was a very short cooldown for what was a very strong ultimate ability. So now that it's 120 at early ranks, it'll take a lot more time for Kiana to really be able to get that down to a manageable cooldown and be able to just sort of fire it off cooldown. Moving on to Rumble, he is getting some nerfs to his scrap shield in order to reduce his defenses. He's been actually very durable and actually been a mid lane pick, so that's why he's getting nerfed in that regard. Moving on to Swain, he's getting a small change here. The bolt range on his Q has been increased, and that's because there are situations nowadays where when you pull someone towards him, they're still out of range of his Q, which makes him feel pretty bad to play, so that is going to get increased. Syndra is getting a bit of a buff here. R is going to be doing more damage per sphere because it's very hard to actually get in range of her ultimate in late game team fights, so if she is able to pull it off, she should be rewarded. And finally, want to talk a little bit here about Xerath. He is now up to 5,000 range at all ranks of Rite of the Arcane, so really be able to shell some enemies from a distance. I don't know if this is the buff that gets him back into professional play. I think he still has a lot of weaknesses that weren't addressed by this, but this will make him feel a little bit nicer to play overall, as he'll be able to make a lot more roaming plays with his ultimate. That's going to be it for me today, guys. 9.15. I talked about a lot of changes at length here, but really not that big of a patch. I don't think it's going to have that much of effect on things. I think the meta will mostly stay the same as it is, but if you're a solo queue warrior and your champion is in these patch notes, you definitely want to be paying attention here. If you enjoyed today's video, go ahead and leave a like, and if you really enjoyed today's video, consider subscribing. I upload a video like this every Monday, Friday, and on patch days like today as well. And thank you once again so very much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I'll talk to you all later.